How is your mental health doing today? Would you give it a thumbs up, a thumbs down, or a thumb somewhere in the middle? Either way, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Thrive Podcast, your daily boost that's all about becoming clear on who you really are. Now, this episode comes with a disclaimer because I am most certainly not a medical professional, and you need to know that nothing I say should be taken as medical advice. And if you need medical advice, you should seek it from a suitably qualified and experienced professional. Righto, this morning I was reading an article that was talking about the effect of lockdowns on mental health. It was particularly relevant for me because today, where I live in Melbourne, we are midway through a 5-day mandatory lockdown. Now, 5 days isn't a long time, but when you consider that last year the people of Melbourne went through a 112-day lockdown, just the prospect of returning to a lockdown setting is bringing up a lot of stuff for everyone. Anyway, this article was talking about feelings of depression, the loss of hope and anxiety within people who would regularly characterise themselves as mentally well, and also the devastating impact of lockdown on those who are already dealing with mental health issues from day to day. In pastoral care conversations over the last year, I've noticed a bit of a trend, and that is, while people are happy to chat about having difficulty with being in lockdown and not feeling like themselves, I've had quite a few people take care to point out that what they're experiencing is most certainly not a mental health issue, and certainly not one that requires any sort of medical assistance, and they'll be all right and they'll get through it. When you consider that these are the same people who would be first in line at their doctor to receive treatment for a health problem in any other part of their body, it started me wondering what was so different about our mental health that we would avoid seeking help when that help is readily available. The way I see it, our worldly way of thinking about our body is partly to blame. Our society has taught us to think of our body, and by extension our brain, as a machine where all the parts have a function and need to be connected together in the right way to function properly. The problem is, when you have a machine and some small part of that machine breaks, or wears out, or stops functioning like it should, then the whole machine stops. It breaks down. It no longer functions the way it should. It either gets fixed with a replacement part, or re-lubricated and gets back to functioning at 100%, or it remains broken and out of service. There seems to be a huge stigma associated with mental health issues, and it isn't helped by this broken versus working way of thinking. And as far as analogies go, the machine illustration isn't particularly accurate or appropriate. So what then can we do instead? I found that it really helps to think of our brain not as a machine, but as a garden, a living organ that, if it isn't thriving, may just be in need of some assistance from a gardener. If you take a look in your Bible, you'll notice that God is not in the business of building machines. He creates gardens, he sows seeds, and he's in the renewal business, not the machine repair business. As well as not being a medical professional, I'm also no neuroscientist. But if you look at the growing scientific understanding of how our brains actually work, you'll notice something. Viewing our brain as a living garden is actually a pretty good fit. Our brain is a wonderfully complex, living organ that is continually creating new connections, and it's capable of establishing new pathways and relearning different ways of doing things in response to life's problems and issues. Gardens just don't fit the broken versus working paradigm of the machine world. If an established garden has a problem, whether that's poor soil quality, weeds, pests, or environmental conditions that don't suit some of the plants, the gardener doesn't condemn the whole thing. They don't rip out every plant and start from scratch. The gardener carefully spends time resolving the issues, one by one, so that the garden as a whole becomes healthier. And in time, once the issues are resolved or managed, the garden will begin to thrive. It's interesting to note that some garden problems, like pest infestations, require treatment, and others, like poor soil condition, require specific nutrients to be added. So if you've been thinking about seeking some medical help for your mental health, but you've been delaying and putting it off, make sure you do something about that today. Gardens are created and cultivated by a gardener who knows what they're doing. And those who are cultivated by someone like that, the gardens, they thrive. Just as thriving gardens require the nurture and care of a gardener, thriving mental health doesn't just happen by itself, and it doesn't happen overnight. Romans 12 verse 2 encourages us not to copy the behaviour and customs of this world, but to let God transform us into a new person by changing the way we think. We are not machine transformers who can suddenly transform from one object into another. For our mind, just as for a garden, the process of renewal is one that takes time, nurture, and care. These Thrive messages may be fairly short, but each one is designed to give you a daily boost, to help you see things you've never noticed before, and to help you become clear on who you really are, the thriving person you were created to become. If your mental health isn't in a good place today, then I want to reassure you that you are not broken like a busted up old machine, even if that's the way you might have been feeling. Just like a garden that isn't thriving, your mind is ready and waiting to be transformed and renewed by God, the ultimate master gardener, whose will for you is good and pleasing and perfect. If that's something you want to know more about, then make sure you subscribe and get notifications for when new Thrive episodes are released. Also, if you have a friend who might benefit from this message, then make sure you share this with them. And if you're here watching because someone shared this with you and you got something out of being here, now's the time to message them to say thanks before you get stuck into the next message. Until next time, blue skies.